The night was calm, and the air smelled of pine and rain. The small mountain village slept quietly under a blanket of clouds, its narrow roads lit only by the weak glow of a few street lamps. Rian was walking home from his late shift at the lumber yard. He liked the silence of these nights when the world felt peaceful and the forest seemed alive but calm. He always took the long path that cut through the woods. Even though people warned him not to, the forest was dense but familiar to him. He had grown up exploring every stream and every tree. That night, however, something felt strange. The animals were silent. No birds, no insects, nothing. He stopped walking and listened. Then he saw it, a bright streak across the sky, brighter than anything he had seen before. It wasn't like a shooting star. It was slower, burning blue and white. It came down behind the ridge with a loud crash that shook the ground. Rian ran toward the sound. His heart raced as he reached the clearing where smoke rose between the trees. A section of the forest floor was scorched black, and in the middle of it was something that looked like a small craft. It wasn't metal like an airplane. It looked smooth and alive, as if made from some kind of shell. Steam rose from its surface. One side was cracked open. He moved closer, covering his mouth from the smoke. Inside he saw a figure lying still. At first he thought it was a person in a strange suit. When he leaned in, he saw the face, human-like, but with faint silver lines that glowed under the skin. The being opened her eyes. They were bright like starlight. Rian stepped back, afraid, but she raised a trembling hand. Her voice was soft and strange, but he could understand some words. "Please help." She looked weak, her body covered in small burns. Rian didn't know what to do. He looked at the sky, wondering if others had seen the crash. If anyone from the military or government came, they would take her away. He felt something deep inside, a mix of fear and compassion. He couldn't just leave her there. He lifted her carefully and started back toward his cabin. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless. The silver lines on her arms dimmed as she fell unconscious again. Rian kept walking through the forest, the cold wind stinging his face. The weight of what he had just done, pressing on his mind. By the time he reached his cabin, the first drops of rain had started to fall. He laid her on his old sofa, covering her with a blanket. She didn't move, only breathing softly. He looked at her face again. She looked peaceful, but not quite human. Her ears were slightly pointed. Her hair shimmered with a faint blue light. Rian went to the kitchen, got some water, and sat by her side. When she woke for a moment, her eyes looked around, confused. She tried to speak again, but her words made little sense. He smiled gently and said, "You are safe here, rest." She seemed to understand that and closed her eyes again. The night passed slowly. Rian couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, thinking about what he had done. If anyone found out, he could be in trouble. But leaving her there would have been wrong. He remembered the fear in her eyes and how human that fear looked. He decided to keep her hidden until he knew what to do. In the morning, Rian heard the sound of helicopters in the distance. He went outside and saw searchlights sweeping over the forest. That meant others had seen the crash. He quickly covered the broken window with cloth so no one could see inside. He then checked on her. She was awake now, sitting up weakly. When she saw him, she looked frightened, but didn't move. He raised his hands slowly and said, "It's all right. You're safe here." She tilted her head, trying to understand his words. Then she pointed to herself and said, "Luma." Her voice was soft and musical. Rian nodded and said, "Luma, I'm Rian." He pointed to himself. She repeated his name slowly, Rian. Over the next few hours, Rian tried to help her eat and drink. She didn't know how to use most of the things in his home, but she learned quickly. When she touched his old radio, it sparked and stopped working. She looked guilty, her glowing lines flickering. Rian only smiled and said, "It's okay." He realized she had some kind of energy inside her, maybe connected to her ship later that day. He went back to the crash site to make sure no one had found it. There were already soldiers and drones searching the area. He stayed hidden among the trees and listened. One of the officers was speaking into a device, saying something about unidentified technology and containment protocol. Rian felt his chest tighten. If they found her, they would not treat her as a guest, but as an experiment. He returned home as fast as he could. When he entered the cabin, Luma was standing near the window looking outside. The rain had stopped, and sunlight fell on her face. She looked amazed by the world, the trees, the birds, the sound of water dripping from the roof. She turned to Rian and said softly, "Beautiful." We smiled, surprised she had learned a new word so quickly. "Yes," he said, "it is beautiful." That night, Rian taught her a few more words: food, water, tree, fire. She repeated each one carefully. When he asked where she came from, she pointed to the sky and said, "Far." Her eyes turned sad and she looked down. He didn't ask more. Days passed, and Rian got used to having her around. She moved quietly, curious about everything, but careful not to break anything again. Sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, she would place her hand on broken objects, and they would fix themselves. Once she repaired his old lamp just by touching it. When he asked how, she smiled faintly and said, "Light helps." At night, Rian would hear her humming softly, a tune that made the air feel calm. He didn't understand the words, but it made him feel peaceful. Still, he knew he couldn't keep her there forever. People in the village had started talking about strange lights in the forest. If anyone came too close, everything would be over. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Rian tried to explain danger to her. He pointed outside and said, "Men come! Bad!" She looked confused, so he made a motion of soldiers walking. Then he pointed to her and shook his head, saying, "They take you." Oima frowned and shook her head too. "No take." Then she placed her hand on her chest and said, "Safe." Rian didn't understand what she meant, but felt she was trying to promise she would be safe. That night, he couldn't sleep again. He looked at her sleeping on the sofa, the silver lines on her arms glowing softly. He wondered who she really was. What kind of world had she come from? Why was she alone? Just before dawn, a strange hum woke him. He looked outside and saw faint lights moving above the forest. They weren't helicopters. They moved too smoothly, too silently. He stepped outside, feeling the ground vibrate slightly. Then the lights disappeared. He returned inside, heart pounding. Luma was awake, standing by the door. Her eyes were wide, glowing brighter than before. She whispered, "They come." Rian didn't know what she meant, but he understood the fear in her voice. He closed the door and said, "We'll figure it out. You're safe here." For a moment, her glow softened. She looked at him as if seeing something she hadn't seen before: trust. She reached out and touched his hand gently. The warmth of her skin was not like normal heat. It was comforting, calm. That morning, the forest seemed alive again. Birds sang, and the sky was clear, but the peace felt fragile. Rian didn't know what would come next, but one thing was clear in his mind: he would protect her. No matter what, and somewhere beyond the mountains. Hidden in the sky, something was searching for her signal. The peace of the small village was only the beginning of something far greater than Rian could imagine. The morning sun rose over the valley, casting a soft golden light across the trees. The forest looked peaceful again, but Rian knew it was not. The soldiers were still searching for whatever had crashed the previous night. He could hear faint sounds of engines far off in the distance. Every time he stepped outside, he scanned the horizon to make sure no one was coming toward his cabin. Inside, Luma was sitting by the window, staring at the forest as if she was seeing something beyond what human eyes could. Her silver lines glowed faintly, and the sunlight made her look like a living reflection of the morning. Rian brought her some food, bread, and boiled potatoes, the only things he could easily make. She looked at them with curiosity, then smiled and said softly, "Food." He nodded, happy she remembered the word. Yes, food, eat. She picked up a piece and tasted it carefully. Her face brightened as she said, "Warm. Good." Rian laughed quietly. It felt strange to hear an alien use such simple human words. But it also made him feel closer to her. For the next few days, they lived quietly. Rian avoided going to the village except to buy supplies. He told anyone who asked that he was fixing the roof and didn't want visitors. When he returned, He always checked the forest paths to make sure no one had followed him. Luma stayed inside, learning more words every day. She seemed to enjoy learning, repeating words over and over until she got them right. At night, she would look at the sky for hours, her glowing lines pulsing gently. Rian once asked her what she was looking for. She said only home. The way she said it carried sadness that Rian could feel even without understanding the rest of her story. One evening, as they were sitting by the fire, Rian heard a strange humming sound coming from outside. He stepped out and looked up. A small drone hovered above the trees, scanning the area with a red light. He froze, his mind racing. He turned quickly and whispered, "Luma, stay inside. Do not make a sound." She nodded and moved away from the window. The drone hovered for a few more seconds, then flew off toward the forest. Rian's heart pounded. That meant the search had reached the outer area of his land. He needed to be more careful. When he went back inside, Luma looked worried. "They come?" she asked. Rian nodded. "Yes, they come. We hide." She nodded again, her glowing lines flickering brighter for a moment, then dimming. She seemed to understand the danger, even if she couldn't explain it. The next morning, Rian decided to move Luma to a safer place. Behind his cabin was a small cellar where he usually stored food for winter. It was cold and dark, but it would keep her hidden if anyone came searching. He cleared out the space and placed some blankets there. When he showed it to her, she understood right away. "Hide," she said quietly. He smiled and nodded. That day, a few soldiers came to the area, asking questions. Rian kept his voice steady as he spoke to them. They asked if he had seen anything fall from the sky. He said he heard the noise but thought it was a storm. They thanked him and left, but he could see their suspicion. He waited until they were gone before going back inside. Luma was sitting near the fire again, her expression calm but her eyes worried. She looked up as he entered and asked, "Bad men?" Rian nodded. "Yes, bad men. But you safe." Psst. She smiled slightly at his words and said softly, "Rian, protect." Hearing that made him pause. He wasn't sure what had driven him to help her that night. Maybe it was compassion, or maybe it was something deeper, the simple belief that anyone who asked for help deserved it. Still, he knew protecting her might bring danger to himself. Yet every time he looked at her, he knew he couldn't change his choice. As days passed, strange things began happening around the cabin. The radio, which had stopped working before, started picking up signals again, but not from any known station. It played faint tones that sounded like messages. Rian tried to adjust it, but the sounds only grew stranger. Luma listened to them with deep focus, as if understanding something hidden. When he asked what it was, she said signal. Not safe. Another night, the power went out across the village. Rian's cabin, however, stayed lit. The lights flickered, but never went out. Luma's silver glow seemed stronger, and she looked frightened. "Energy come," she whispered. "Find me." Rian didn't know what she meant, but he could tell she was scared. He asked from sky. She nodded. They search. Feel me. The idea that her presence could be traced by some kind of energy made Rian uneasy. He didn't know much about technology, but he understood what it meant if they could track her. He thought about moving her farther away, maybe deeper into the mountains, but that would be dangerous for both of them. One morning, Rian found her outside near the stream, standing barefoot on the rocks. The water glowed faintly around her feet. "Luma," he called softly, "what are you doing?" She turned to him and said, "Listen." He walked closer and realized the air around them had a faint vibration, like a hum too low for most people to hear. "Earth speak," she said. "Your world alive?" "I hear it." He watched as she touched the water gently, and the glow faded. It was peaceful, almost beautiful. But part of him felt uneasy. If she could do this, what else could she do? That night, Rian dreamed of bright lights and strange voices calling from the sky. When he awoke, he found Luma sitting beside his bed, her eyes glowing softly. "Bad dream," she said. He nodded, surprised she had learned that phrase. She touched his hand lightly and said, "Safe now." Calm warmth spread through him, and the fear from his dream faded. Over the next week, their bond grew stronger. Luma learned to cook simple meals, and even tried to fix his tools. She was gentle and patient, though sometimes distant, as if her mind wandered far away. Rian noticed she often looked at the stars longer each night, her expression both longing and afraid. One evening, as they ate dinner, a loud sound shook the air. It wasn't thunder. The windows rattled, and Rian ran outside. A bright flash lit up the horizon, and a line of light moved across the clouds. He heard a strange tone echo through the forest. Luma came to the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. "They find," she whispered. Rian turned to her, his heart pounding. "Who?" She looked up at the sky. "Hunters." The word sent a chill down his spine. He didn't need to understand everything to know that whatever was coming wasn't friendly. He said quickly, "We leave." "Now." She nodded, and together they packed a few things: food, water, and a flashlight. Rian led her through the back trail that went deeper into the woods. As they walked, the night filled with distant rumbling sounds. Luma stopped once and touched a tree, her glow dimming. "Hide light," she said, and the glow along her skin faded until she looked almost human in the dark. Rian watched in amazement but didn't ask how. They reached an old hunting cabin he had built years ago when he used to spend weekends in the forest. It was small but safe. They stayed there until dawn, listening to distant engines passing overhead. Rian could tell something large was scanning the forest. When morning came, Luma looked weak. Her silver lines were barely visible now. "You hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "No hurt, weak, too far from ship." Rian thought about going back to the crash site to see if anything was left that could help her, but that area would be full of soldiers. He didn't want to risk being caught. He stayed quiet for a while, then said, "We will find a way." She looked at him, her tired eyes softening. "You helped me. Why?" He thought about it. "Because you needed help. And because you're not alone now." She smiled faintly. "Not alone," she repeated. Then she leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. As Rian watched her sleep, he realized how much his life had changed in such a short time. Just days ago, he had been an ordinary man working at the lumberyard. Now he was hiding a being from another world, running from forces he didn't even understand. But deep inside, he didn't regret it. He looked out at the forest, the wind moving through the trees like whispers. Somewhere beyond those hills, someone or something was searching for her. He didn't know how long they could keep hiding, but one thing was certain. He would protect her for as long as he could, far above the earth, unseen to them both. A faint signal pulsed through the clouds, a beacon calling to the stars, carrying Luma's hidden energy across the void. It was only a matter of time before her past reached their doorstep. The cold mountain air felt sharper as the days passed. The forest that once gave Rian comfort now felt full of eyes. Every noise made him tense. He had grown used to silence, but now it carried meaning, a warning that someone or something might be near. Luma could feel it too. She had become quieter, her once curious eyes now cautious. One night, as the fire burned low, Luma sat near the window watching the stars. Rian was fixing a broken chair beside her when she suddenly spoke. "They near," she said softly. Her voice trembled like the sound of wind through leaves. Rian put down his tools and asked, "Who is near?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pressed her hand against the window. The faint silver glow from her skin pulsed like a heartbeat. "Hunters," she whispered. "They find my light." Rian stood still. He wanted to ask how they could find her, but she looked frightened, and he didn't want to make it worse. He sat beside her and said calmly, "We will be careful. They will not find you." Luma shook her head. "They always find," and she looked at him with eyes full of worry. "You're not safe if stay with me," he smiled a little. "Then we'll both be unsafe together." For a moment, her expression softened. She didn't smile often, but that night she did a small, real smile that made the cabin feel less cold. The next morning, Rian went to the village for supplies. People were gathered in small groups talking about strange lights seen over the forest. A man at the shop said he had seen something move through the clouds like a silver bird. Rian pretended to be curious but not concerned. He bought what he needed and returned quickly. When he reached the cabin, he found Luma outside, standing in the snow barefoot. "Luma," he said, surprised, "you should be inside." She didn't turn around. "I hear them," she said softly. "Right. In air. They search." Rian looked up but saw nothing except clouds. "You can hear them?" "Yes," she replied. "Their ship hums in sky. I feel in bones." He didn't understand how that was possible, but he believed her. She had senses far beyond his own. He led her back inside, and she sat by the fire again, wrapping her hands around a mug of warm tea, though she never really drank much of it. That evening, she began telling him more about her world. Her words were still broken, but enough for him to follow. "My world named Seraphim. Long ago, my people lived in peace. We made light, we shared it. Then war came. Others want our power. We flee. Many lost." Her voice grew faint as she looked down. Rian realized for the first time that she was not just lost, she was a refugee, the last of something that had been hunted across the stars. "Why were they hunting you?" he asked quietly. She placed a hand over her chest. "Because of this. I carry core of light. They use it to make weapon. I run away." Rian stared at her glowing lines, which seemed to brighten as she spoke. "You mean you have something inside you they want to control?" She nodded. "Yes, I can make energy heal or burn. One, choose heal. They want burn." The words sent a chill through him. It was hard to imagine someone like her being used as a weapon. But he had seen enough of the world to know that power always attracted greed. He thought for a long moment, then said, "You don't have to be afraid anymore. No one will take you." Uma looked at him sadly. "You cannot stop them all, Rian. They strong. Many ships. They find me soon." He shook his head. "Maybe, but not yet. And until then, I'll do everything I can." The next few days passed with growing tension. Strange signals began to appear on Rian's old radio again. It played soft, rhythmic tones that sounded almost like words. Luma listened closely one evening and said, "They call me. They send voice through waves." Rian turned off the radio, but she looked alarmed. "No, they know now. They come faster." He frowned. "Then we move before they get here." She hesitated. "Run no help. They track through sky. I hide light only little time." That night, Rian dreamed of fire in the sky and saw Luma standing in the middle of it, her body glowing like the sun. He woke to the sound of wind shaking the windows. Luma was sitting on the floor near the door, her eyes closed, her glow faint but steady. "What are you doing?" he asked softly. "Hide signals," she answered. "But cost energy. I weak." He brought her water and made her drink. "Rest then. Don't push yourself." She opened her eyes and whispered, "If I stop, they find us." Rian didn't know what to say. He watched her until she fell asleep, her silver light slowly fading as exhaustion took over. The following morning, the hum of engines filled the air again. This time it was louder, closer. Rian ran outside and saw 3 small crafts flying low over the forest. They were black and sleek, moving silently except for a faint vibration in the air. He knew they weren't human-made. He rushed back inside. "They're here," he said. Luma stood, her face calm, but her eyes glowing brightly. "Time come." Rian looked around for anything that could help. "What can we do?" she said softly. "I must go to my ship. There I make beacon. It call them away from here." He stared at her. "But that's too dangerous. That area is full of soldiers." She met his eyes. "If stay, they destroy village. I not want hurt your people." He hesitated. She was right. If those ships attacked, no one would survive. He couldn't let that happen. "Then I'll go with you." "No," she said, shaking her head. "Too dangerous for you." Rian took his coat and said firmly, "You said you're not alone anymore. I'm coming." For a moment she looked at him, then nodded. Together, they packed quickly and left before sunset. The forest was quiet again, but the quiet felt wrong. They moved fast through the snow, following the hidden trails Rian knew well. The sun dipped behind the mountains. Darkness covered them like a heavy blanket. Halfway to the crash site, Luma stopped and placed her hand on a tree. The silver glow spread across its bark like veins of light. "They close," she whispered. "I feel their steps on ground." Rian listened, but heard nothing. Then, from far behind, came a faint clicking sound, not natural. He crouched and pulled Luma behind a fallen log. A moment later, a beam of red light passed through the trees, scanning the area. The light moved closer, sweeping across the snow. Luma closed her eyes, and her glow faded completely. The red beam passed over them and moved on. Rian held his breath until the sound faded away. When it was gone, he looked at her and said quietly, "That was close." She nodded. "They near crash now. We must hurry." They continued through the forest until they reached the clearing. The wrecked ship still lay there, half buried under snow. Soldiers had been there. The footprints and marks of tools were everywhere, but the craft itself remained untouched. As if they hadn't been able to open it further, Luma stepped forward slowly, her hand trembling. "Home," she whispered. Rian stayed beside her as she placed both hands on the broken hull. The silver light from her arms spread into the ship, and the cracks began to close. The air filled with a low hum, and a soft blue glow surrounded them. Rian looked around nervously. "Won't this bring them here faster?" "Yes," she said quietly. "But I must finish. I send false call. It take them far away." He watched as she worked, her entire body glowing now. The light from the ship grew stronger, rising into the sky like a beam. Somewhere above, the dark crafts shifted direction. The sound of their engines changed pitch, fading into the distance. Luma swayed, her glow flickering. Rian caught her before she fell. "You did it," he said. "They're leaving." She shook her head weakly. "Not all. Leader come. He's stronger," Rian frowned. "Then we'll deal with him when he comes." She looked at him with tired eyes. "You brave, Rian, but you cannot fight them. They not like you. They not human." He smiled faintly. "I've noticed." The ship's glow began to fade. Luma leaned against him, too weak to stand on her own. "I buy us time," she whispered. "Use it." Rian looked up at the sky where the light had vanished. The air was quiet again, but the feeling of danger lingered. He knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something much larger. He looked down at her and said softly, "Then we'll use every minute we've got." As the cold wind swept through the clearing, Rian carried her back toward the forest. The stars above seemed closer that night. Watching silently as two small figures vanished into the trees, unaware that the greatest storm was yet to come. Snow fell thick across the mountains that night, covering every tree and stone in a blanket of white. The forest looked calm, but Rian knew the calm would not last. After Luma had sent her false signal through the ship, he could feel that something had changed in the air. The sky itself seemed heavier. Inside the small cabin, Luma rested by the fire, her body weak and pale. Her glow had faded to the faintest shimmer, like moonlight trapped under skin. Rian sat beside her, placing a damp cloth on her forehead. "You should rest," he said softly. Luma opened her eyes slowly. "No time," she whispered. "Leader come." "I feel him," Rian frowned. "How do you feel someone who's still in the sky?" She looked toward the ceiling as if she could see through it. Not see, feel. His mind strong. He searched for me. Rian didn't understand everything, but he could hear the fear in her voice. He got up and checked the windows. The snow outside glowed faintly from the moonlight. The night was too quiet. Hours passed, and Luma slept again. Rian sat near the fire, lost in thought. He remembered the life he had before all of this, working long days at the lumber yard, talking to the same people, living a quiet life. Now everything was different. He was hiding an alien being who could change the fate of the planet, and he had no idea what to do next. When the firewood began to burn low, he stood up to add more logs. That was when the window flashed bright for a second. Rian turned fast and saw a blue light move across the trees. It wasn't lightning or a drone. It was something larger, slower, scanning the forest. He ran to Luma's side and shook her gently. "They're here," he said. Her eyes opened instantly. The silver light inside them flickered brighter. "He here," she said. "Leader, come for me." Outside, a low hum filled the air. The ground trembled as something massive passed overhead. Rian went to the door and looked out. Above the treetops, he could see a dark shape moving slowly through the clouds, its surface covered with faint blue lights. It wasn't a ship like the small ones before. This one was huge, almost the size of a mountain. He felt his stomach tighten. "What is that?" he whispered. Luma stood weakly beside him. "Their command ship." He sighed. "Can it see us?" Rian asked. She nodded. "Soon, he used mine to find me." Rian closed the door quickly. "Then we move now." Luma shook her head. "No. If we run, he'd destroy everything." "Need to stop him here?" Rian stared at her, confused. "How?" "You're too weak to fight." She looked down at her hands. The faint glow flickered again. "I can call light. But costs much energy. Maybe not survive." Rian grabbed her shoulders gently. "No, there has to be another way." She met his eyes. "You saved me before. Now I save you." Before he could answer, the ground shook harder. The sound of engines roared in the distance. A bright beam of blue light shot down through the clouds, striking somewhere near the edge of the forest. The snow around them flashed white, then melted instantly. Rian helped Luma outside. The sky above was glowing with strange patterns of light, like waves of energy spreading across the clouds. "They begin search," she said. "He used energy to burn my trail." Rian's heart pounded. "We can't stay here," Luma nodded. "Go to old ship. I use it again. This time, to end it." They started toward the clearing where the ship had crashed. The snow made the path slippery, and Luma stumbled several times. Rian supported her, helping her move faster. Behind them, the ground vibrated again. Small crafts broke through the clouds, gliding down silently, their lights sweeping across the forest. They reached the clearing just as the first of the crafts descended nearby. The crashed ship still glowed faintly from where Luma had reactivated it before. She stepped forward and touched its surface again. Her glow flared brighter, spreading across the hull like flowing water. Rian stood beside her, his eyes scanning the sky. "How many are coming?" Luma whispered. "Many, but one matters. The leader. Strong. He thinks he can control me again." Rian clenched his fists. "Then let him try." The sound of heavy footsteps came from behind them. Rian turned and saw 3 tall figures emerging from the trees. They were not human. Their armor was dark and smooth, their faces hidden behind glass helmets. Each held a strange weapon that glowed faintly blue. Luma stepped forward slowly. The silver light along her skin brightened until it matched their glow. "Go back," she said. Her voice echoed with a strange power that made the air ripple. One of the soldiers raised his weapon. "You are property of the Seraphim Dominion," a mechanical voice said. "Return the core or face elimination." Rian moved in front of Luma without thinking. "She's not your property," he shouted. The soldier paused as if confused by his defiance. Then he aimed again. Before he could fire, Luma lifted her hand. A wave of white light burst from her palm, knocking the soldiers backward. They hit the ground but were not harmed. Their weapons fell useless into the snow. Rian looked at her in shock. The light around her was brighter than he had ever seen. "How did you do that?" he asked. She breathed heavily. "Not fight. Only stop." The soldiers began to rise again, but a voice echoed from above, deep and commanding. "Luma." Both of them looked up. A tall figure descended from a beam of light. He wore no helmet, and his skin shone faintly silver, much like Luma's, but darker. His eyes glowed blue like ice. When he landed, the ground shook lightly. Rian could feel the power around him. This was the leader she had spoken of. Luma stepped forward slowly. "Arkin," she said. The man smiled faintly. "So you still know my name. You ran far, Luma, but your power belongs to us." "No," she said firmly. "I choose peace." Arkin's smile faded. "Peace is weakness. You were made for creation, and destruction. You cannot change your nature. Rian stepped between them again. She already did. Arkan looked at him with cold curiosity. A human defends her. Strange. Do you even understand what she is? I don't care, Rian said. She's alive. That's enough. Arkan raised a hand, and the air around Rian froze. He couldn't move. You speak with courage, human, but you are small. You cannot stop what is coming. Luma's glow flared brighter. Stop, she said sharply. A pulse of light spread from her body, breaking Arkan's hold. Rian fell to the ground, gasping for breath. Arkan looked at her with fury. You waste your strength for him. He saved me, Luma said. He showed me kindness. Something you never did. Arkan's eyes narrowed. Kindness will not save your kind or his. Join me, Luma. Together, we can rule this world. Your light and my will, unstoppable. She shook her head. I will not destroy, and you will fall, he said coldly. Energy crackled between his hands. He unleashed a beam of blue fire toward her. Rian shouted her name, but before the beam could strike, Luma raised both hands. Her silver glow turned white, and the beam vanished as it touched her light. The air exploded with sound, shaking the trees. Arkan stumbled backward, his eyes wide. You cannot win. You are fading. Luma's light grew brighter. Then I will fade for peace. The ground began to tremble harder. The wrecked ship behind her rose slowly, lifted by invisible energy. Pieces of it floated upward, surrounding her like a storm of silver fragments. Rian tried to reach her, but she turned and said softly, Stay back. He stopped, unable to speak. Her light filled the clearing, washing away the darkness. The soldiers shielded their faces as their weapons melted into the snow. Arkan roared in anger and rushed forward. But Luma raised one hand. A wave of light struck him, sending him to his knees. You forget, she said. Light can heal, but also free. Her glow spread outward in a huge circle. The energy rippled through the forest, into the sky, into the ships above. Every machine touched by it began to lose power. The lights in the sky flickered and went out. Arkan shouted in rage, You doom us both. Luma looked calm. No. I free us. Her light grew so bright that Rian had to cover his eyes. When he opened them again, the ships in the sky were gone. The clearing was silent. The snow was falling again, soft and peaceful. Luma was on her knees, the glow fading from her skin. Rian ran to her and caught her before she fell. Her voice was weak. He gone. No more hunters. You did it, Rian said. You saved everyone. She smiled faintly. Not save. Just stop pain. Rian looked up at the sky. It was clear now, the stars shining brighter than ever. He felt tears sting his eyes as he looked back at her. You'll be okay. You'll make it. She shook her head slowly. Light too weak. But I'm glad I met you. No, Rian said firmly. You'll live. You have to. She smiled again, touching his hand. You show me kindness. You show me choice. That is enough. Her hand grew cold, and her glow dimmed until it was gone. Rian held her close, silent as the snow fell around them. The forest was quiet once more, but this time it felt peaceful, truly peaceful. Far above, in the dark sky, one last spark of silver light drifted into the stars, like a promise that her spirit would never fade. The morning after the great battle was quiet. Snow covered the forest in thick white layers, muting the sounds of the world. Rian still held Luma close, feeling her small, fragile body against his chest. Her glow had disappeared, leaving her pale but alive. He did not know if she would regain her strength completely, but seeing her breathing steadily was enough for now. He carried her inside the cabin carefully, laid her on the blankets by the fire. The warmth made her shiver, but she did not complain. Rian looked at her face, studying the faint silver lines along her arms. They were barely visible now, like traces of a dream. You're safe, he whispered. No one can hurt you here. Luma opened her eyes slowly. Her gaze met his, soft and tired. Rian, she said, her voice almost a whisper. Earth, safe. Yes, he said gently. You made it safe. You did more than I ever imagined. She smiled faintly. I feel strange, weak, but free. No chase, no hunters. Rian nodded. You have given them a choice. They cannot control you. That is your power. She looked at him with gratitude. You help me. I never forget. For the next few days, Rian focused on helping Luma regain her strength. She ate more now and could walk around the cabin without support. They ventured outside when the snow softened, exploring the forest together. The quiet had returned, but both of them knew the peace was fragile. They needed to rebuild, to understand what had happened, and to prepare for whatever might come next. Luma learned quickly about Earth. She touched the trees, studied the animals, and marveled at the changing sky. Your world, she said one day, different, beautiful, life. Strong, Rian smiled. Yes, we have our flaws, but we also try. That is why you found kindness here. She nodded slowly. I learn. Humans can be brave and gentle. Her fingers traced the bark of a tree, and Rian noticed a faint silver glow returning to her fingertips. But my power. Still part of me. Yes, Rian said. But now it is your choice. Weeks passed and Luma became stronger. She helped Rian around the cabin, carrying firewood, and even fixing broken tools with her light. She laughed for the first time, a clear musical sound that made the forest feel alive again. Rian watched her with quiet joy, amazed at how much life she had brought to his quiet world. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Luma stood at the edge of the clearing, looking at the horizon. Rian, she said softly, I think, my people, they will know I survive. Maybe they come someday. Rian stood beside her. And if they do? She turned to him with a serious gaze. Then I will decide. Not forced. Free choice. He nodded. That is what matters most. You choose your path. The night fell, and the stars shone brighter than ever. Luma and Rian sat together near the fire, sharing stories and simple words. She told him about her home, the world she had seen, and the life she had left behind. Rian told her about his village, his family, and the quiet life he had known before. Both of them listened, learning from each other, understanding each other's hearts. As time went on, the two grew closer. Rian realized that Luma had changed him. He was braver, kinder, and more aware of the universe beyond his small village. Luma had learned that humans were not only fragile, but capable of great strength and courage. Together, they had faced danger, and together, they had survived. One morning, while they walked through the snow-covered forest, they heard a faint hum in the sky. Luma stopped immediately, her eyes widening. Signal, she whispered. Rian looked up, tense. Another ship? She shook her head slowly. No, my people. They find me. Not hunters, friends. Safe. He exhaled slowly. Then it is time to meet them. Luma nodded. I will go, but not leave you. You taught me trust. You gave me home. Rian smiled. Then we go together. We followed the soft glow through the trees to a small clearing. A ship hovered silently above the ground, shimmering with silver light. Luma's eyes brightened, and she reached out toward it. The craft opened gently, and figures stepped forward. They were like her, shining faintly, peaceful but powerful. One of them, taller than the others, stepped closer. Luma, the figure said, we feared you lost. You are safe? Yes, she said. Thanks to him. He gave me choice. She gestured toward Rian. He is brave. He is my friend. The figure looked at Rian carefully, then nodded. You are welcome here. Your kindness saved her. That is honor. Rian felt warmth in his chest. He had never imagined being thanked by beings from another world. I only did what I thought was right, he said simply. The Seraphim smiled. Then you are of great heart. Luma has much to teach us about your world. You may join us for a time, if you wish. Luma looked at him, eyes shining. "What say you, Rian?" He smiled. "I stay, but I watch the stars with you." She laughed softly. "Yes, watch together. Learn together." The visitors left Luma and Rian alone for a moment, hovering above in the ship. Luma turned to him. "Rian, this place?" "My choice. Earth's safe. Your people safe?" "I not forget you. You'll never forget me," he said, feeling sure. She smiled, placing her hand in his. "And I not forget kindness. That is strong. Stronger than any weapon." Days became weeks, and Luma's strength returned fully. She still glowed faintly, but only when she wished. Rian taught her about humans, and she taught him about the stars, their history, and the value of choice. The villagers noticed the change in him too. He seemed happier, calmer, and stronger. People whispered about the strange lights they sometimes saw in the forest, but no one could explain them. Rian only smiled and said, "It is nothing. Just nature being kind." One night, as they sat together near the fire, Luma looked up at the stars. "Rian," she said, "I think Earth is good home. For me, for people who help. For humans, strong." He nodded. "Yes, and you helped make it stronger too." She leaned back, her fingers brushing the snow on the ground. "We fought. We survived. Together. That is power. Not in weapons, not in fear, but in heart." Rian smiled, holding her hand gently. "You've shown me that. And now, others may learn too, because of you." The night air was crisp and clean. The snow sparkled under the moonlight. Above them, the stars shone clearly, as if blessing their journey. Luma looked at him and whispered, "Thank you, Rian." He shook his head. "No, thank you. You taught me courage, hope, and kindness. That is what I will remember." For a long time, they sat in silence, listening to the forest breathe. No soldiers, no hunters, no danger, only life, quiet and steady. They had survived the storm, faced impossible odds, and come out stronger. Luma finally stood and stretched. "Time to explore more," she said. "Earth has many secrets. I want to see them all." Rian laughed softly. "Then we will go together. You lead, I follow." She smiled, her faint glow returning. Together, as they walked into the forest, the snow sparkling under their feet, Rian realized something. Humanity had earned a friend from the stars, not through power or fear, but through kindness and trust. Luma had shown that one being's choice, one act of compassion, could change everything, and for the first time in a long time. Rian felt truly hopeful. Above the mountains, the stars glimmered, shining on two small figures who had survived the impossible. The universe was vast. The bond between them, human and alien, was stronger than any force that could ever come from the skies. They had faced darkness, and together they had found light. The snow fell softly around them, covering their footprints as they ventured deeper into the forest, ready for whatever the future would bring.